Well, first, thanks for having me. Great to meet everyone. Thank you for staying up late. I know this is quite late in Asia time zone. I know everyone is joining from multiple places. I'm Monica. I'm founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox. I also am the author of Rethink Creativity, and then have you seen my friend's children's book. I'm working on the mission. My mission is to make creativity accessible and really design workplaces for all that is inclusive. And I got into the passion of wanting to do people and culture development work because I was in a job that I didn't feel creative or feel stuck, which was in nuclear weapons security and government work, which actually was part of the reason why I've been to work for that realm to Singapore and like Thailand and other places as well. And it was fun actually going back to Singapore a few years ago for innovation work and actually making a full circle back. Ethnically Korean American. I grew up both in the States and in Korea, and worked in Europe and in the States and Asia as well. And so, Startup Weekend was actually my entryway to startup and entrepreneurship. So, I'm very humbled that Startup Weekend existed because if not, I don't think I would have had the courage to start my business way back when and also have the community because that's why I volunteered way back when, and then I loved it so much that I became an organizer in Washington D.C. Then became a trained facilitator, and then traveled to a few places to facilitate. And so, unfortunately, I would say my last startup weekend was probably before the pandemic. So, and then I have done some mentoring during the pandemic, but it still doesn't feel the same. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me, and look forward to hearing your questions and how I can help.
Well, I think it's not so much of questions, but we would like to learn from you as well because you mentioned that from corporate work and government work, and after that you basically stumble upon Startup Weekend, and from there your whole journey began, right? As an entrepreneur yourself, and doing something that you have passion in, and I think with our session tonight or this morning now, right? It's more geared towards like business development plan, or in other words, we call BMC, like business model canvas, right? So I think every entrepreneurial journey will have, you need to have a sustainability, right? Because I think all of us here today is with one word, which is passion, right? But in Asian context, passion can turn into money, right? Right? I mean, in general context, right? So how can we turn passion into like sustain, like we can go long term, right? Because especially in creative, or especially in martial arts or in arts, music, right? Passion is all from passion, burning passion, but a lot of time you can't make a lot of money, or you can't even sustain. Instead, you're spending a lot more of your own money, right? Get 4 jobs and stuff like that, right? So I think this session would be great to hear from you, with your next personal experience, and how you actually started the whole thing with, like, from an idea, and then slowly with the emphasis of business plan.
I'm smiling because, like, what a perfect question to start for this group. Hey, real talk time. None of this is easy. And, whatever stage you're at, I would start with first, like, finding, like, do you feel like you're the only one who feel that way? So I start with that question, Malcolm, because one, I think it was really hard for me to get over that first hump of like all those questions, Malcolm, that you just said, which honestly, yes, I'm Asian American, but hey, I'm Asian too. My parents still live in Korea. I'm very Korean in that realm. They still ask me when I'm going to get married, like all that transitional questions. I'm still there. So, yes, business, what innovation, what making money. No, don't ever do that. What's wrong with you, Monica? Just stay in your job. What's wrong? It's not even a doctor job. Like just stay in this job. So, thank you for the honest question because I think when all of that felt like I was the only one who was thinking of it, it felt harder. So that's actually why it might seem a little untraditional, but before you even jazz into the business development and business model and all that jazz, like first see who's the people around you. Yes, your friends and family, though they are gonna have doubts, they're gonna be like, "Okay, Malcolm, good job, we support you," but they're gonna be behind them like scratching, like, "Okay, when is he gonna change his mind? He has a stable job, he's making that 6 figures. What's wrong?" So you want to expand your horizon, and this is why communities like Startup Weekend for me was like such a transformative experience. Like meeting complete strangers who's like, "Oh yeah, I can see that," or like, "No, I can see that, but this is where you should improve, or this is where you should do differently, or like this is who you should talk to." I was like, "Wow." These people are not only hearing me out, they're actually helping me think about this differently, helping me think of new solutions. And so I didn't even know, honestly, Doktari, to your wonderful question of how do you create a business model, honestly, I wasn't sure because like I knew what I needed. I knew the why, which is like I want to solve the pain point of like I knew what it was like to be stuck at work that I felt that I thought I loved, and I didn't feel like I could have it. So I knew what that felt like. How to solve it? Honestly, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure on what business model as well. So I started with what I thought I could do, and that's actually where for those who's still kind of maybe in the ideation. I know for Startup Weekend you got to have a solution, so I'll talk about that too. But in general, life wise, if you feel like you're not sure of the how yet, start with what you can. So in my case, my starting point was actually starting with, hey, let me just host an event, let me just host a conversation. And through those dialogues, people would walk away saying, like, "Oh my gosh, Monica, these question prompts, I'm going to take this to my team meeting. I'm going to do this for my event." I'm like, wait, I got to charge those things. Like, they're taking my IP. Like, back then, I didn't know it was called IP, intellectual property. And then over time, I realized, okay, community events are good. I'm like selling out events nonstop, but like, it's free. I'm not generating money. So then I had to think about who do I get? How do I get to the corporations? How do I get to like the businesses? But like, would they doubt me because I came from something called nuclear weapon security? I didn't come from the traditional culture or HR background. And so I had to build my expertise, show the work, really show the work, and tell it from the quality to really build on that. And so Dr. to your question, and Malcolm, to your question on the business model, over time I realized, okay, because I know the why, because I know why this has had to exist. And even though there were people who doubted me, both actual close friends, honestly, we're going to have some life transitions, both in relationships, because some people might not really see it. And it's important that you keep surrounding yourself, not decline your old friends, but like help them see, but also build more new friends who's going to help you see. So you keep expanding your horizon of learning and unlearning as a leader and as an entrepreneur to get to the understanding what is the right business model as well. And so for me, that got me realizing, okay, the traditional business lens is that you have services, coaching, facilitation, workshops. I will do that. And to get better at that, I need to learn how to be a coach. So I got my coaching certification, and I got that training to learn how to model that and be a coach. I've learned also then how to I started attending a lot of workshops to see how they're designing it that I liked, that I didn't like. So then that's how I built it. And then over time, of course, that's how you then break down the other prices and the scope, right? Like this is then the type of clients that I know is going to account for the budget, but also I can actually solve it, the pain point of their people and culture problem, as well as diving into areas that I cannot do. And so that's why, to your question, business model, friends who don't get it, it could be a reality for some of us, but the key is what you do with it. That's what's really, really key. And so you already attending this right now, being part of this is a great starting point, regardless of what stage you're at the business. And so really excited and looking forward to diving into some of the details. So hope that's a helpful start.
Yeah, indeed. Personally, I'm from hospitality background, and I don't know really a lot about business or entrepreneurship until I really stumble upon Startup Weekend, right? And and I think some of you here might feel a bit weird. Why are we all constantly talking about community, right? And this word like community, right? Or now is even greater. You're hearing the word ecosystem, right? So I think because we this community that we talk about, it's really about like making friends, it's not like some form of networking events, like literally giving out cards and then sealing deals, right? I'm just hoping, right? But this is where because one event you attend and you met, I'll meet Monica, meet Joyce and hi, and then the next event, hey, you two again, hi. And then the next event, you're gonna talk a little bit more like, hi, I'm so and so, and what you do and stuff, and you start to get to know each other. And then slowly from there, you start to, uh, become friends, right? And once, when what normally friends talk about is normally about ideas or plans or whatever, right? But when you talk about ideas, you start to branch out different thoughts, right? So you might have some friends that might talk about, like, Monica, I think you better stick to your corporate job, 9 to 5, stable income, and you're gonna progress very fast, right? Why you want to work on something that doesn't make money? So I think a lot of you here might have this kind of fear, right? But I think Startup Weekend provide that very safe environment for you to test out whatever you have here and put it on a paper, right? And working with strangers. So I think, Monica, what's your experience with working with strangers, um, and then what kind of value do you get out of these strangers, that when you talk about, like, the business model, or business plan, besides the teammates of Startup Weekend, or even after Startup Weekend?
You never forget your first startup weekend, because for me, if I trust you're gonna still see me the same way. I was super scared. I was super scared. I'm like, oh my gosh, I say something, and what if they judge me? What if they think I'm not good enough? Like, oh, there's this weird government kid who's like in this group. Like, and then I happen to be in a group where like a lot of them have done some startups and like have some experience. They were throwing out jargons. Actually, Doktari, to your question, like, what is a business model? I was the one in the room. I was like, wait, what's a business model? What's a revenue model? Like, wait, why are we doing this? Like, what's an MVP? Like, wait, what is this again? Like, wait, I thought we decided on this. And so it was a little hard. And I still like to never forget that, because it's a humble reminder that everything that you might ever see in somebody who's like, oh, they're so successful, they seem to have a business, all had a humble beginning. I'm still making my way. I'm still learning how I can do better at everything, and going through that journey. But I think if I ever forgot how it really felt, how scary it felt, and like moments of like, why am I attending this event with strangers and like pitching an idea and like I have no idea where this is gonna go. I we forget it. And so that's honestly how it felt. And that's why, to your question of, quote, quote, working with strangers, I think once you do that first time, though, it is kind of contagious. That's actually why I then started volunteering and started immediately, okay, when's the next event? Because I loved it so much. Because the startup weekend space felt so safe that not only, even though I didn't know anyone, which, quote, quote, the definition of stranger, you leave the meeting, you leave the event now walking with new friends. So they were no longer strangers. So the word stranger felt strange, because so interesting how you didn't know anyone, but then you walk away with so many new insights, but also friends and people you can relate to and learn from. So a lot of my close friends actually have come from here. Again, they're not overnight. Just, you might be surprised, some of the people that you meet here, even if you had one conversation, they might actually turn out to be someone you stay longer. So stay in touch, not just with mentors, but with the people that you meet here. And to build on that, Malcolm, if it's okay, I would love to start kind of tackling Doktari's question on the business model. How would
Sure,
you address that?
sure.
Well, so the starting point of that wonderful question of business model and revenue model, I used to feel a little uncomfortable with the jargon and the terminologies, but the simple way to think about it is a business model is giving you clarity in how the business makes money to sustain and also grow. So that way, investors, of course, want to understand that, because they want to see, is this business, when they often say, is this business viable and like scalable? They want to understand, is the return high, right? That's an expression you probably hear a lot. So the return high is that, okay, I spent this much, this is how much it costs to produce or develop, with all the labor costs and people and design and all of that. And then because the price is this and the return is X amount, right? That's the math investors are especially looking at. And that's the reason why they first often ask, what's your business model? Because often in softwares, it's a little easier, of course, to up the price, right? Like, your upfront cost in one system is maybe a couple $1,000s, but then you can charge per person multiple dollars. And then the difference of the return that you get is going to be higher. So that's why often a lot of software companies, a lot of tech companies get investor relationship more easily because of that. companies like myself that is service based is a little harder, right? Because it's going to be a little indifferent, a little inconsistent. That's the word, inconsistent. And that's okay. And that's actually part of the other reason aspect I want to address that I don't know if you were thinking is when I was starting my business, I felt like because I hear the word investor, business development, revenue, and pitching so much that if I don't do that, I felt like, am I not doing the right business? Am I not like doing a cool, good business? And I want to say no. Some of us might be a lifestyle business. And I know some of us have like a misnotion of what lifestyle business is. It basically means that, you're kind of quote, quote, committed to life and want to do it for a long time. You're not intending to sell it. Others, they want to build it and sell it as fast as possible. That's another business. And then in others, it's also, trying to grow, but maybe at some point sell, if not maybe. But it doesn't have to be one or the other. All of those, if you're solving your pain point, the customer's pain point, making a difference, generating greater profit over time, and then the cost, that's where it's a business. If not, I'm sure you heard of this. It becomes a very expensive hobby. Please don't do that as well. And that's the reason why, Dr. it is very important to have a business model that shows clear revenue growth. That's why you see a lot of these fancy presentations. People say, like, let me show the trajectory, because the first few years are probably going to be negative. And so even the presentations you're preparing for, over the weekend, the reason why we want to hear the business model is that we know you're solving a very important problem in your business for this weekend, but we want to see how you're going to generate the revenue to back it up so it's not just an expensive hobby. So for instance, if I'm solving, Dr. I'm curious, so like what's the business you guys are working on? You feel free to share it in the chat. But regardless of what that is, you want to show how you're constantly improving and making that difference bigger, and how your revenue sustained, because your cost of development is only going to increase. So should be your return in growth. And so that's kind of on the overarching, I hope, like breaking on business model is. Malcolm, I'm sure there's more things you want to back.
Yeah, I think it's very important with, like, but with all the revenue and profit, but I think what what they may need to know now is about the when we talk about business model. It's really like, okay, is it a subscription base, or is it a freemium, or is it maybe it's totally free, but we get the source of revenue or income from another party, like maybe it's a government base, or CSR, that kind of a revenue that comes into to keep operation costs, right? But of course, what do you think at this stage, right? We always talk about lean startup, or being lean, right? So I think with this topic today, or this session, we can touch about what lean startup is all about, and why would we want to be lean, right?
Such a great reminder, and thank you, Malcolm, for building that. Which is, I do want to then briefly touch upon back to a bit of the business model, and why the business model canvas is actually a really helpful starting point for this business model. Right? It's like, not only do you want to make sure how is the return looking, and again, I understand where this is just for the weekend and a start, but the revenue. The other thing that the business model canvas that provides very beautifully, that Malcolm, you were touching upon, is like, who's the buyers and who's the payers. So for instance, some who do ed tech, right? Your your users might not be the payers, right? So your users might be students, but the people who pay might be your parents of the kids. So that's why then how you position, you want to think about, how am I marketing? How is my business model marketing to the parents? So that way the kids are participating, but then how much of a difference are we making sure we build in, so that way the model is generating growth and revenue? Again, we're all kind of building on different hypothetics, but that kind of framing of viewing is really key in how to make the business model canvas digestible. And so as you're looking through that, that's why it asks a lot of the details, right? Like, what's your operation looking like? What's your expense hypothetically? What are the different components? Because it's never just like, oh, let me do this event. It's going to cost zero. I'm like, no, your labor costs, the software costs, the development costs, the design costs. There's a lot of cost that goes into it. And so that's kind of where it's really, really powerful. And again, whether you do that as a software where you're deciding, okay, this is why we decide to do a freemium. This is why we decide to do this stage of this. We want to be able to hear in your presentation and your research to know this is why we decided. So that's kind of the business model and how you can build upon. And as a result, Malcolm, thank you for that wonderful reminder on why lean is so important, because you got to stay lean. Lean, simply another way to phrase it is you got to like bootstrap every single aspect. Operation, how do I bootstrap this? How do I make this lean? So there's so many things. If hey, like we're Asians, right? Like, or I guess I don't know. We might have some people who's not Asian, so we're all inclusive. But like, hey, like if we always had more money and more resources, of course we want to fancy it up, make everything like top quality, high premium. Like nobody's gonna say no to that. But unfortunately, that's not the reality. Somebody's got to pay for it, and so that's where the lean is so key, because it's not just in the money. It's also in how you make decisions and do everything. And unfortunately, part of the lean that this startup weekend is training you is that there's not a lot of time. So you got to make lean decisions. Okay, yes, you can spend hours and hours researching to decide, is this the right price? Is this the right market? Got to stay lean though. Okay, let me allocate in the next hour. Just dive in, research as fast as possible, look at all the markets. Based on that, this is what we have. What should we do? Okay, with this information, then I think we still don't have enough. So then what we should lean strategically to is maybe I should ask to 3 people that I heard, hey, Malcolm's in hospitality. I talked with 2 others who's in hospitality. Let me ask their input to design something based on that. So lean is just not in the business and the revenue. It's how you operate, especially during this weekend, but even throughout your business, because we're always not going to feel like we have enough resources or budget, but that should never stop you, because when you plan for lean, both in the operations and workflow, then everything is possible. And then we're getting a lot of questions. This is great.
So, Francis, would you want to? Is there anything that you want to add to ask Monica so that she can share more?
Firstly, sorry because my computer got rebooted, so I didn't get a lot from what she said before. So I will just for now just follow.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
But feel free to jump in. All right. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So I'm not able to read the questions yet, but I would like to. We will come back to those questions, but I think the word bootstrap. I think some of you guys here are not very familiar with what bootstrap is all about. So bootstrap is pretty
Wonderful
much like
words to bring in.
right. Monica, do the honor. Explain what bootstrap would be.
Apologies for keep dropping all these jargons. I'm dating myself in it. So thank you for calling me out on that. So bootstrap basically is the kind of the notion that you are, especially in the business concept, you're kind of the single source of the revenue. So you are investing yourself. You're not relying on investors. You're not relying on other source of revenue to build your business. So when I say Innovators Box is my bootstrapped business, that means that I'm making a note that I didn't receive investor money. I used my savings to make this business, and whatever I make, that's how I'm kind of building on. And so when you hear people who said bootstrap, that's the reference to it. Now, is there something better than the other? Yeah. I mean, yeah, it would be nice to have more money, but like what I do get as a bootstrap business is that I don't have another person, investor hovering over me. I'm like, knock, knock, Monica, where's my money? Where's my money? Where's my update? Like, I don't have that. So that's a choice. One, of course, absolutely. If the investor route is something that you want to do, please do that. But even for startup weekend, I encourage, like, is investor route really the way that you want to raise funding? Or don't forget, your biggest source of revenue should be directly not the investors, but your customers. So if you feel like, hey, I know already right now this weekend, and it's possible because I've seen some incidents where somebody says, hey, I was able to sell something over the weekend and they're willing to pay the money as soon as we have this, you might be surprised. That's already showing actual proof that people are willing to pay, which is far stronger than saying, I'm going to pitch this and investors are going to pay me. Please don't do that. I don't want to hear that presentation on Sunday if I hear it later.
But I totally agree, and I came across a lot of questions like when we promote Startup Weekend to university students or to anyone about like, hey, we got this event, come and join us. But first thing first, they'll ask one question.
Money.
Yeah, is there money? Is there investor? Then my question back to them is that, do you have an idea? No. So why would you ask, right? So so I think we also, I think with community leaders, facilitators, organizers, I think we went through the same cycle around and around. We've seen so much, and I think we are still learning, but we still always, I think something very important here to share with everyone. I think Monica would be great for you to add on, right? Is that I think everyone needs to understand one thing, is that when do you need to raise fund, and
Yeah.
why do you need to raise funds? And if you can stay bootstrapped, you will stay bootstrapped unless you are about to you really need to scale, because it's up to your head, right? So you need to scale. That's where you need fundings, right? So in this context, are you able to like just let everyone know, like, like why they need to scale, to raise funds, and when do they actually need to raise funds, and is it okay not to raise funds and just going the route of bootstrapping?
So,
Yeah.
Malcolm, thank you for sharing that, because
I,
what's so key is that often I think we hear in the news, oh my gosh, this person sold their business. It's like somebody announced that they got X number of investors. Honestly, our Asian brain, especially like from like us, is like, that looks nice. I kind of want that too. But again, the key is that that's just one of the many businesses. Hey, the mom and pop shops in the street, the restaurants, they make ton of money without needing to have a single investor. Or like maybe their investor was like the bank loans that they got. Even if they don't look different, they are not good, or like less of a business. That doesn't make them. And so I understand sometimes we come here with maybe not the full picture. And this is why, again, going back to, everyone being here, that's why this community is so invaluable, because if I can't learn that in this safe room here and have that perspective, then where else would I be able to gain that clarity? I'm like, oh, I didn't realize. So if that's how you felt before, that's absolutely okay. We're here to, talk about it. This is how I've learned as well. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize. And then if you want to raise money later too, that's absolutely possible too. But what I hope you feel encouraged is whatever business, whether software or not, whether investor or not, if you have a product, you're solving a problem for who, and you have a need, your business then needs to exist. Don't let no investor or no, I didn't get to this pitch event, I didn't win it, stop you. If that stopped you, then if I'm maybe being too harsh, let me know. But like maybe the business then wasn't good enough. So you got to trust your business, because you are the biggest driver. And even people who make millions and billions of dollars or more, sometimes they don't take investment because it's like having another person looking over you. And that's also not fun. So, yeah, the money might be nice, but it comes with a cost. So it also takes a long time to get those. So raising funds, yes, is one of the many things that are often done in startups and business, but not the only way. So I hope that everyone feels encouraged in that. And with that,
okay. Maybe
here's
I can say
yeah,
something.
Yes.
Yeah. What they should also understand is that the business model is dynamic. It's like it's not a fixed stuff that you just plan and you just keep following. It's dynamic. So it cannot be at early stage and you need money and you look for investors. That it won't work. Because instead of focusing on your business, core business, you'll be focusing on how to give make your how to reform your investors, and that will take you a lot of energy. Okay, so what you need to understand is that focus on your customer, as Monica and Malcolm said. Customers, they are the one they should be your first stream revenue, the customers. And why you and it's true, it can happen at a certain stage when you have when you have found your sustainable business model. That is when you can think of how to upgrade and get funds in order to scale your business. And from what Malcolm said, you need to answer these questions: why and what, and also the who. Who has to be your investor? Because you don't have to look for anyone. Yeah, you cannot look for investor that will ask you a lot of stressful tasks to do. Okay, so you should who can be your investors, why do you want to have investors, and why and what will your investor bring in for you. I think by taking these points into consideration, it will help you to know what or the why, or you know to better understand if or not you need to have investors in your project.
Mm. And this is such a beautiful reminder because again, we're not saying that you shouldn't have investors, right? Like if that's a right business model, like build it in. Like we want to hear those in the pitch, but what we want to discourage is that that's the only way, right? You want to always diversify. Again, this going back to the business model, you want to diversify your revenue source. And so if I can quickly tackle some of the questions I'm seeing
Yep,
in
I
the
just
chat.
wanted to
Mm.
share with Malcolm
Sure.
and Francis. The chat bar is actually on the left side. There are a lot of questions coming in. I'm conscious of time, so I think we can take the rest of the time to address
Sure.
all the questions that the participants have.
Okay, okay,
So
okay, no problem.
yeah,
Yep,
so
read
building
it.
on that, I'm seeing a lot of questions on like how do I price things, how do I set income, how do I set ratios and money. So the starting point is first, this it might seem contradictory, but like you want to start with first again, who is your payer, who's your user, how is this going to be delivered, how much cost do you anticipate, and then as a result, look at what the market price is to decide. So for instance, Vida and Gupta, like, don't hate me for saying this, but I would say actually our income sometimes might be the last thing we need to be thinking about. So yes, I want to make sure you all make money, so don't go poor on it. But like, you got to first equate for all the other costs that we know tangibly first, and then see the income to see, okay, like how much cushion does it make sense? Because if we start with income, okay, I want to make $10,000. Let me start with that, and then the ads, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that might end up being really expensive. So you want to actually see what's the other actual expense you have to expense out, right? You're talking about the app. There's probably app development costs for those who are looking for developers. That's great. Go find developers. If you don't have a developer, think about the anticipated cost for development and think about how you can show, again, with MVP. That basically means that even if you don't have that fancy visuals put together with like Canva with all the beautiful images, like this is how the app would look like when we have the budget and pay it out. That's a good start too. Like, don't feel like you have to have a developer person, and if not, you'll fail. No, that is absolutely not the case. So break that down. And that's actually as a result how I would break the price. Then to see, okay, based on this, this is maybe the percentage we can anticipate. Again, probably not just your income, hopefully, but the rest of the team and the labor costs and all of that. So that's how you would break down. Same thing with the deciding of the ratio of the money spent on advertising versus software. Absolutely great question, because often we spend a lot of time in the software but not enough in the marketing. So what you want to think about the marketing timeline is that you should be spending both time and money strategically, thinking in the lens of like, often we used to in corporations, right, we often take like the waterfall approach of like, okay, everything has to be done and then we'll announce it. But this is where, again, Malcolm's reminder of the lean is key, right? Sorry, we don't have the budget and time for that. So it might be that, hey, I'm announcing this cool thing like in a few months. Like, we'd love to hear your feedback. Start getting fans and feedback, because by the time that's where, even though when the software is not done, you're starting getting input. And by the time you actually have the software ready, you're going to have more maybe loyal fans, friends, allies who's ready to jump in and who actually made the product better because you actually took the feedback early on, which actually you should all be doing this weekend constantly. Don't wait until like, I'm not ready to share this to Malcolm and Francis or Joyce. Like, no, like talk with other people, get their reactions. If they're saying like, hey, this button is not clear, that's a feedback. Ooh, that's interesting. I didn't think about it. That's a good insight. Can we do something about it? Can I not do something about it? That's a decision you can do. But when people share feedback, don't say like, they don't get me. What's wrong with them? That's just a data point. Take it as a raw insight of like, okay, I might agree or disagree, but you want to collect as many data points. So that's actually, as a result, what I want to recommend more is not just thinking about the ratio per se, but sequencing. So Vanda Gupta, I hope that answered. Same thing with pricing the product, Uktari. You want to think about how you see what the competition also looks like. Because again, think from your user point of view. What are they used to paying? I know I'm guilty of those, even like movie subscriptions of Hulu and like Netflix. All it needs is that 50-cent chain of like, gotta unsubscribe, got expensive, not happy anymore, right? So you want to think from, okay, I'm now maybe sharing too much, but you know what I mean. But like, you want to think from a customer point of view of like, are they going to be price danger with like 50 cents or like a dollar or like maybe $5, $10? What's out in the market? Because especially when you pitch, you want to share that as an example. Hey, guess what? We're not only better quality, but we're even like $5 cheaper than like, I'm just sharing as an example, X number of cheaper. And that's like, ooh, cheaper, like ding ding. Or it might be like we need to pay like just $1 more to get like X% more. I'm like, okay, I'm willing to pay $1 more and get 10 more things. Like that seems reasonable. So that's how you want to think. Research what's the market rate, research what you're actually providing, and think about your who. So that's how, Dr. you want to think about the pricing. Same thing about DP, your comment about PM fee. Actually, I'm curious. I might not know the acronym. What is the PM fee DP is referring to? Are you suggesting that don't have funding until you have PM fee? Is this the... Also, if I'm
Monica,
talking too fast, let me know. I know it's
Monica?
evening for everyone.
Yeah, I have an input.
A
What's
product market
PM fee?
product
Yeah.
market fit.
Okay. Product market fit. Okay. Sorry. I'm using different jargon and terminology. So sometimes I forget the different acronyms. Thank you. So actually, kind of, yes, DP in a way, you should focus on one, you want to think about the product market fit because that's actually going to influence how you think about the price, right? So is the market ready for this? Again, there's probably like the new innovation curve that everyone has seen, the bell curve, right? Are you in the emerging market stage of that? This is like so new that people will need time, a lot of convincing, or this is like everyone has seen it. They're just maybe price sensitive, influencing quality, or maybe it's like, nah, not interested, right? Think of where your product is fitting to that market in general. And then from there to see, okay, like, is it that I need to like get more product development budget, or is it that I need more marketing budget? But you don't need to get money to learn about that, is what I would say. So actually, the question you're asking is great because actually there's some assumptions that I hope we can untangle to make it easier, which is you actually don't need to have funding to even discover your product market fit. You should be able to research, learn from the resources, and then talk with people to build on that. And then from that you can determine, hey, do I need more funding? Do I need to go to the customers first and then making that decision? Which leads to then, Sophia, to your question about 3-year achievement goals. Yes, you should be aiming for profit. Profit should be happening. This is not an expensive hobby we're building, but you want to be realistic. So think through everything that we talked about. How much expense do we anticipate based on what we know so far? We're always going to be anticipating there's going to be factors like COVID. We have no idea that could happen. So build that out, anticipate based on what you know. Hey, I think this is where it could head. This is where I think we could start making profit. And again, everyone understands, especially, at Startup Weekend or pitch events like this, that we know we're working with what we know so far. But the key is, how far have you thought of what you know so far? That's the nuance that we're looking for. And then as a result, DP, your comment about board of advisors versus hiring people for various skill sets. I'm all about all of the above, which is like you meet good people. Goal is always like, how do I make this person my person and like work with them? And so you absolutely, of course, want to make sure you first have the team members who have the skill, have advisors who support you. But again, focus on what is the problem you're solving. Often I think we get hung up on that this is the product. And I want to emphasize, if you forget everything and anything, emphasize again, everyone should have a presentation that shares clearly that this is a problem I'm solving with this product. To this person, this is the price, this is how I'm making money. And this is why, hey, you should pitch, you should join our initiative. That sequencing can't be the opposite. Often we get hung up with like, this is the amazing product, I want to do this product. But then is that really solving the problem? Same thing with your people. Because this is the problem we want to solve, these are the type of people we need. These are the skills we might need. And these are the advisors that will complement. Some of them you might already have this weekend, some of them you might not. But that's the way I want to encourage you sequence. So, yeah, so I hope that helps. And then as a result, financial model, I mentioned you want to break it down. So find the person in your team, if that's you, that's great, who's good with numbers, and ask like, hey, how much is this all going to actually take based on, again, what we know so far, which is a very key nuance, and then break it down. And so yes, recommend business model canvas to really take a look. There's also the empathy map to really remind what is our customer willing to pay, because again, you might feel that maybe $5 or $10 is reasonable, but maybe not for that customer, because maybe they're comparing to something else that gets more with less. Okay, I think I caught up so far. Okay, let me pause.
So I think one thing very good that, because Francis brought it up as well about dynamic, right? So it's like the business model, because you are still in a very early stage, right? So in an early stage, you can still change, right? You just want to test it out. Like some examples, like people just let it use for free, and then they get to see, they want to get feedback, they want to see what needs to be improved and what's lacking, and a lot of things, so they let it run for free. But along the way, they are already understanding like, okay, how much should I charge, and how much should I charge. But normally charge nowadays, if you do observe a lot of services or apps nowadays, like have you guys heard of Butter? Butter, it's like Zoom. It's called Meet Butter. It was free, and then it's quite interactive for workshops organizers, and it's very, very fun to use. It was free until recently they just implement the pricing plan, so a subscription base, right? So I think business model is not just like everything about like you must earn money from your customers, but you can also maybe give it for free to your customers to use, but someone is paying. For example, you have an advertisement spot, or maybe you have a collaboration with some like certain brands that, if you are ad tech, for example, you can always, parents are paying for it, but the kids can enjoy. But who's paying? Colleges, universities that can actually pay to be part of that particular platform, right? So there's a lot of ways and options, right? So one part of it, I would like to ask Monica, is that how do you recognize, or how do you identify, when we talk about the next stage, right? After the early stage, the next stage, how do you identify stakeholders? Like, how do you identify who should I engage as an investor to our business?
To answer that, let me build on your last comment about, freemiums or different aspects. What I want to really emphasize is that I want everyone to remember that even if it's freemium and free access for the customers, your cost is increasing. So that's where you need to absolutely think about the business model whole cycle, right? So yes, it might be free for the customers. And actually, if you just noticed, what Malcolm just did was free publicity. Now we all learned about this new platform, but like that was the cost that this company decided to do. Hey, if we make it premium, individuals like Malcolm might talk about this in front of other people because he loved it so much. So that was the marketing cost they decided to put in. We're going to make this free so that way people love it and talk about it, which is a marketing strategy that a lot of freemium models do. That does not mean that this company is, happening empty-handed. Somebody's going to have to pay the cost, which is their company. So that's how you want to think about, just because so actually, so like example like WhatsApp, that's why a lot of people, when they start thinking about this, it's like, oh, if something's free, how are they actually making money? Like, are they taking my IP? Like, are they selling that somewhere else? And unfortunately, yes, some are. So that's the area that you want to think about. And when you start seeing from that lens, I mean, there's really no free lunch. Like, yes, it might have been free, but what they've just done is, this is a perfect example. So you can absolutely have that in part of your marketing plan as a strategy. But what I want you to all walk away feeling clear and understanding is that that comes with the cost, right? So you're just pricing that as like, this is the X amount a month that we want to do maybe freemium or this level. So that way we are considering that as part of our marketing cost to make sure people love it, talk about it, use it for a little bit. And that way then we charge. And that's actually how social media has continued to stay quote, quote, free for users, right? I don't still pay unless I do ads and other software tools, right? That's how they charge money. And so use that as an example. Nothing is truly ever free. Let's make that, I want to kind of sync on that. And then as a result, that's where you want to think about when you talk with stakeholders, investors. The next question Malcolm is asking, because if you're not clear on that, then those are one of the things that investors are looking. It's like, do they actually know that the freemium that they're talking about, who's paying for it? Are you paying for it? Or the investors has to pay for it? Like, they're going to want to understand that. So as long as one, you understand and are clear about, yes, because we're going to have this way of keeping the freemium model of X number of months for, to acquire this many customers and fans who's going to talk about it at events like this. Like, that's how we're going to find our early birds. Like, we're going to get X% of discount and like give loyalty. That's actually our brand. This is how we're going to build. Then investors or stakeholders and fans are going to be like, oh, they understand us. Like, they actually are thinking about the long run and not just like doing it because it looks cool. That's where you would find. And so as a result, to your question, for those who are here this weekend, find your stakeholders where you are here right now, right? Like, if I were in your shoe, one of the things I've done, and I look forward to seeing all your messages, which is like, I would reach out all on LinkedIn to all the speakers, all the mentors, and any person that I've met that I really clicked. Speakers and mentors, I automatically do because I know they came for a reason. They wanted to give back. So they're likely somebody that I want to stay in touch. But I also do equal, if not more, people of the people I met here, right? So mentors, speakers, facilitators here, right? Like, connect with them, because you never know, even if they were not sharing, maybe Malcolm shares something on social media and you're like, oh my gosh, that's actually an opportunity that I needed. This person met so-and-so. I should reach out and ask that question. You want to expand your possibility. So use that as a reference. Don't feel like, if I don't see somebody here this weekend, it's the end of the world. No, it's the start. And so that's how I would build. And so to that question, yes, it's great that if you already know there's specific people that you want to talk to, but if you don't, start with, what are the things that you need? What are the things that you need help? Who are people that you feel who's able to provide that support? And again, don't judge the book by its cover. Sometimes that person who's not working in your industry might feel like, is this person actually going to be helpful? Or like, can I help of anything? You might be surprised. And so there's always something that we can learn. Like, if I were in your shoes, knowing that Malcolm now is in hospitality, and I know the whole industry because my brother works there, is like, there's so many customer service experience. Again, I don't know what part of hospitality Malcolm does, but he could probably explain what happens behind the scene, how much operation happens. I'm sure Francis has a ton of insight to share as well. So those are the insights you should be thinking about. Whatever is said, that's not end of the story. You got to crave for it and dig deeper. So hope that answered both of your questions.
Okay.
Wow.
I want to raise the point.
Yeah, go ahead,
Okay.
Francis.
About those who were asked question about price. I want them to understand that the problem is not the price. The problem is the added value what their product or their solution is bringing. That is what the customer is willing to pay. It's not the product itself, but what is the added value that product is bringing, or in the solution you are providing, what is the added value you are selling, because that is what you are selling to the customers. So that is what you need to take into consideration while you are working on your business model or your financial revenue. Yeah, you have a solution. You have a solution, but instead of focusing on the solution, you need to focus on the added value, because as Malcolm said earlier, nothing is created. There's nothing new under the sun. Okay, so you have an idea somewhere in the world, another person has the same idea. Now, what do you propose as innovative is what your customer is going to buy. I think they should get that in mind. Is, for example, why should I buy an Apple instead of Samsung? I don't know. You see, why you analyze, Samsung has this, Samsung has this, Samsung has this, Apple has this, Apple has this, and That is why somebody is willing to move $100,000 to buy a phone, and someone will not be able. So they should also take that into consideration. Added value with the solution they are proposing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Francis is
Yeah,
oh,
Francis
just to
is really, yeah.
no, just sorry, just to briefly touch on that. Francis is bringing a great point, right? So this is actually part of your other business model canvas strategy. What is your business focused on? Are you going to be like Apple, who's like, you know what? I'm going to charge it all the way up and customers are going to come because like our quality is going to speak for itself. Or you can be like Walmart. I'm like, no, our value is that we're going to be the cheapest and most accessible and available. Both is good. You just have to have clarity of what business model direction you want to head. You want to be the high premium, absolutely works. Just got to back it up. Why? And then if you want to be free and low budget but accessible and high quality in that way, that works too. So the key is building on these different points. I want you to constantly reframe and think about, okay, what do I want to do? How do I want to build it for my business? Because again, thinking about the user, because again, maybe the how, you might have a high quality and you have added value, like Francis says. But again, think about the customer. Are they willing to see that that's a worthwhile cost? And if they still feel like, no, only a small percentage, then we got to take another look. So that's why you always want to think about the who and think about it. So always connect all these different aspects. And yes, I'll put in the chat as well. But Malcolm, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. So I think that's great. I think everyone here, you must think of one thing. Money, you cannot earn every single penny from everyone, right? So you just have to, two things. One, are you solving a real problem? That's the constant one question you always come back to. That's number one. Then number two, are you providing value to your customers? No matter what price, no matter what kind of pricing you are setting it, these are the two things that will make you stand out as compared to the rest of the people out there. So seriously, a lot of questions. I think all of you ask all these amazing questions, but have you asked yourself that first question? Are you solving a real problem? And what kind of value are you adding back to your customers before you even start to think about how much I should charge? And even before I should ask, should we have a board of directors or should I hire people? Right. So I think tonight, Monica shared so many insights that like we constantly we constantly still learning every single day. Things are changing every single day. So not just being lean, but you also have to be agile. You need to able to be flexible, able to change anytime. That's why we are all called as one word, startup, right? You need to able to switch very fast, change very fast, pivot, right? So I think all this is why we are all here today, why you guys are here today. End of the day, this is a safe environment, a safe space, allowing you to test any crazy idea you have, but with a reality check. All right. And without much, I think I'm not sure whether Monica, do you need to rush off? Otherwise, we would like you to share one last part, like, just to encourage the participants here tonight, to really let them, like have a breather, like okay, so not so stressed and don't know where to go, because I think they will always want to know, like, okay, how do I know I'm actually having the right business model, right? So or am I having a complete business model? So I think this will be the last question for you to add to share on, and yeah.
Yeah, well, first, thank you all very much for having me. Thank you, Joyce, for reaching out. And then, Malcolm and Francis for the thoughtful questions. Everyone for asking here as well. And, just I hope that you feel heard. That's the one thing I'll start with. Is like, I hope you asking these questions, you realize, oh, wow, I'm not the only one who had this question, or that I'm not the only one who was trying to figure out. So the fact that you're asking, the fact that you're here, that's already winning. I hope you recognize it. Yes, it's great that if I win, that's great if other people get the business, but all of what you're learning here in the nuances, this is the hard work. So give yourself a little pat on the back. Also, many of us, you're staying up. Thank you for your flexibility. And do reach out. I'm happy to actually, I just need to take a 5-10 minute break, but I'm happy to linger in 10 minutes to like, if anyone else has any other questions. I know it's already quite late. So like, let me know. I'll be hanging out in a corner. Let me know, Joyce, where you want, or like when you want me to go. And then the advice just on agility is that it's okay to know what makes it hard for you. The key is what you do with it. So I realized that I was feeling a little agitated my first startup weekend because I'm like, we spent all this time and now we're flipping the business model like on Sunday morning. Like, what? Like, that's crazy. And like, for folks who's listening, I'm like, oh, wait, is that bad if I do it? I'm like, no, it's not bad. It's okay. It happens. But I realized it was part of my expectation. I had a fixed mindset of like, okay, if we started this plan on Friday, this is how it should happen over the Saturday and then Sunday. And because I didn't expect, like, even though it was exciting, it was really stressful. And I wish that somebody just reminded me that, hey, this is okay. This is you having fun. Just like, learn, focus on being, again, agile. Know that you might need a change. But agility and staying lean and all of that is a lot easier when you have clear, grounded in who are you, what problem are you solving for who. So again, if you forget everything and anything, Malcolm has beautifully mapped out, again, the sequence, what is so key. Don't start with the pricing. Don't start with your product. Start with what you're solving for who. And the what should be the why, right? And again, that's where you can keep it tangible. So thank you very much. I hope I wasn't talking too fast, but these are very good
So
questions. And
much.
I'm so excited for you.